Sunday morning back at my place. You could sleep late, I don't mind. Break some eggs, make a mixtape, and let it play like 20 times. I ain't got no money, but I got lots of time. So let's spend a little, live a little, cause every day the sun will rise. Wake up!
All right, Komba, what up?
Komba, what up, Jaehyun?
Welcome, everybody, to the Terrace Up My Heart podcast. This is episode 4. Tonight, we will be covering week 27, I Can't Be Here. And in this episode, oh, wait, did I already do this? No, sorry. Yes. I'm like reading my outline wrong. Yes, week 27, I Can't Be Here. This is the episode where Rio comes back and Vivi meets Rio for the first time. Our jammin' intro song is once again brought to you by the incredible Run River North. It's called Wake Up, the acoustic version. I'm your host, Jonathan Mendez, aka Jaehyun, and I am joined as usual by my co-hosts Lucy Lee and Daniel Shea. The icebreaker question of the night is, if you yourself were cast on Terrace House, given your personality, your Myers-Briggs, your Enneagram, and the strange production setup of everything, how long do you realistically think that you could personally live in the house? Kind of like this weird new quarantine reality, if you actually had to go in there. So, Dan, if you were cast, how long would you actually stay?
Well, as a type 3 Enneagram, I would want to stay until something has been significantly accomplished in the house, like some type of event or a breakup or failed attempt at a relationship, and then I would leave.
So it could go as long as possible or as short as possible.
I'm tempted to say I would want to stay as long as possible, but I would probably want to leave just after something happens, just so it's right. Yeah, not overstay, not stay too little.
That makes sense. Lucy, what about you?
My Myers-Briggs is INFP. I don't know how that speaks to it, but I thought I'd just add context. I think I really value relationships, so I would probably stay as long as I felt that I developed a close friendship with someone in the house. So not a specific time frame, but that I feel like I've wrapped up the relationships or people in the house's like arcs well enough that I feel like I can leave. So probably if I was like one of the first members, I'd probably leave when I felt like new members were coming in and it would be too much of a burden to develop those new relationships again. I'd probably leave somewhere at that point.
Nice. I am an ENFP, INFP, depending on the season. I think you can attack this multiple ways. If we're speaking practically and you're getting free rent, I'd stay there the entire season. But knowing myself and the weird setup of like production being there all the time and me honestly not even getting my own space, which I kind of value, I think I'd put a max at probably 6 months, like 4 to 6 months. That seems like a long time already for me, to be honest with you. Like,
I think that's 2/3 of the entire show.
Okay, maybe we'll half that. 3 months max, but if we're looking at just what's happening in the house, I think I'm with Lucy in terms of I'd want to have established some, meaningful relationships with people. And I think in that setting, it's probably easy to do because you can have such deep conversations with everyone at different, times of the day and whatnot. So yeah, that would be my answer. All right, with that said, week 27, I Can't Be Here. Before we get into our recap, as usual, we are live on all of our socials. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor. Please rate and review us 5 stars on the Apple Podcast app. And if you leave a review, please feel free to also leave us a question or topic that you'd like us to address in a future episode. On Twitter, you can find us at Terrace Heart Pod. On Instagram and YouTube, you can find us at Terrace Up My Heart. All right. And also you can watch us on YouTube, obviously. With that said, week 27, I Can't Be Here. Let me just go through a quick recap of the episode. The biggest new change in this episode is that Rio finally returns to the house, and that shakes up the dynamic between cast members. So first, week 27, we open up on Vivi and Kai cooking breakfast. Vivi and Kai share a moment, and they both decide in that moment to go out sometime. Vivi reveals to Kai that she likes people who are frank and straightforward, and Vivi also comments on Kai's intense eye contact. Shortly after that, Rio finally rejoins the house, but this time he comes in limping because he sprained his ankle during a basketball game, and Vivi finally gets her much-awaited chance to meet him. Hannah wears her panda suit, and Rio tries to get situated with his new ankle situation. And in this moment, Vivi gets her chance to have her first one-on-one convo with Rio as Hannah preps Rio's ice pack for him and gets him situated on the couch. And they both instantly connect on sort of being foreigners. Rio being a foreigner when he was going to school in America, and Vivi being a foreigner here in Japan when she went to school to study fashion. Then Rio heads to the room where he meets Tapas for the first time, and Tapas just kind of pops up from his slumber, and they have this very weird first awkward meeting together where a groggy Tapas is still very respectful and says, oldest chooses first. After that, Hana and Rio share a moment in convo at the lunch table where Hana tells Rio that he is a superhero and that she's sad to see him so down because of his recent ankle injury. And for the first time, she takes that big step and leap to reveal that she has fuzzy feelings for him. And in this moment, Rio is just so stoic and awkwardly unsure of how to respond. After that, the gang then holds their first party celebration together as a full group, celebrating Halloween. And I think they cook paella and also have this pasta with ink sauce that stains everyone's lips, and everybody has a great old laugh about that. Vivi then tells Rio at the table that he's almost a spitting image of her ex, and things get kind of awkward there, but you can definitely sense the flirtation going on between the two. During this dinner, Tapas then asks Emika to show him the playroom, and they share a moment there. And Kai also asks Vivi out on a date in front of Rio. We cut to Tapas and Emika bonding in the playroom, and they both connect on their shy quietness and awkwardness. And after that, the girls reconvene and talk, and Emika reveals that she can see herself dating Tapas. And then Hannah asks Vivi who she feels connected to the most, and that this is where the tension sort of rises and begins, as Vivi reveals that she's feeling some sparks for the man with the droopy eyes, as Emika put it, the guy whose eyes look like this. And I think to end this episode, Kai and Vivi go on their date to make some pots or something. They go to like a canvas pottery or clay pottery shop or whatever and go on a date. And that's basically the gist of this episode. It ends obviously on the very heartbreaking moment of Hana having to see Rio and Vivi hit it off on the couch while she's at the kitchen table with Kai, and you see her crying in her panda suit, and that's pretty much where we close this episode off. So if there was one word to describe this episode for me, it would be painful, just because my heart breaks for Hana, but sometimes, as they've been saying, it just can't be helped, right? Okay, let's start off with, does anybody have anything that stood out to them? Any funny or quirky observations that don't fall under any specific category? And then after that, we can go into highlight of the night, MVP, etc. Dan, anything stood out to you in this episode?
If I can steal your describing the episode in one word, I would say juicy. And I feel like I align with Yama-chan in this. And whenever something like terrible happens on a relational level, but makes for great TV, I get excited. So I was like, okay, I might be in to this episode, because last episode, the cast was, I mean, I had grown to like the previous cast so much. I thought they had great chemistry that I was skeptical going into this one. But episode 27, I'm back in. Hello?
Oh,
Jaehyun,
Jaehyun.
did he freeze? Oh my gosh.
Well, he's frozen for me too.
That's so crazy. He's frozen.
Yahoo!
If this is a joke.
Wait,
This
if
would be
he's
so
holding his
insane.
face for that long?
Oh my gosh.
What do we do?
Kind of scary. Okay, he's gone. Okay.
Oops, sorry guys. Sorry, my internet
Oh
dropped out.
wow! But you
I'm
came back
guessing.
seamlessly.
Oh, I did. Okay, I'm guessing you still have Dan recorded, right?
Yep.
Dude.
Okay.
We
So
thought you were playing a joke on us.
no, I
Like you were
wasn't.
like mannequin challenging us.
I'm sorry, dude.
So
Could you
I
just
finished,
say? Yeah.
and it just looked like you were like.
Like either what Dan said was super deep, where you're like you had to process
I was
it
so
for long.
engrossed in what you were saying. Sorry, could you finish? Could you say your last thought again before you ended?
I was talking about Yamachan.
You
Oh,
said that you this finally got you into the new cast.
right, episode 27. I'm back in.
Nice. Lucy, did you have anything that stood out to you that you thought you wanted to bring up, observations or anything?
I think something to note was like the guys were very proactive in asking for dates. Like they got in and then they just went for it. And that's actually not the common theme of this season. So that's with
true.
this, yeah, which really frustrated me about this season. And they brought it up too previously. Like the girls were like, why don't the guys just ask us out, you know? So very rare. 2 dates were asked on this one episode.
Nice. Yeah, I think some observations from me. Hana was in a panda suit for pretty much the whole episode.
That's it.
And I thought it was both hilarious and kind of endearing. I was like, hey, be you. And actually, I am naming this episode Panda Depress. Kind of like Panda Express, but Panda Depress because she's depressed. All right, anyways. Also, when Vivi and Kai were eating breakfast, I was so bothered by that piece of rice or food that was just hanging out on the side of Kai's mouth for a minute as they kept talking. And I was like, can somebody motion to this guy, one of the camera members, that he's got this piece of food sticking out and he just keeps laughing and talking. And I think the next scene, someone told him or something and he had it off. But that was bothering me for like a hot second. Also, it seems like Tapas is like a movie geek, which Lucy and I can relate with. I think Dan, you can relate with this too. And I think that lends to his like super quiet, introspective sort of personality that I'm sure he gets a lot and takes in a lot from watching movies, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was also surprised that, like Lucy said, he was assertive because his initial impressions of him coming out, he mentioned he was so nervous. You wouldn't think that he would be intentional and assertive that way. So that was a kind of nice surprise to see from Tapas's personality. With that said, why don't we jump into highlight of the night? Dan, do you have a moment that particularly spoke to you or made you laugh or anything like that?
I thought the show ended on a high note. Hana crying, Kai trying to console her. I'll touch back on that later. But that was really juicy. And this is one of those episodes that made me want to watch the next one, like immediately, like on the spot. So highlight of the night. The love triangle that's beginning to is it a love no it's 2 people liking the same person.
Love
that's a love triangle. Well,
yeah.
Anyway, yeah, you know what I'm saying.
Lucy, what about you? Highlight of the night.
Mine's very trivial, but when Emika did the Rio droopy eye impression, I was like, yes, the B word is coming out again. She just cannot let it hide for long.
The guy who looks like this.
Yep.
I think for me, it's the moment when they're all eating together, and they have the ink stain on their lips, and Hana says, "Your lips are stained too, Patos." And Patos, and Tapas immediately goes, "It's not Patos," and everybody just bursts into laughter. And again, this is what I love about Terrace House, right? The laughter, joy, and the group chemistry was there all in that one moment, and they could all share in that laugh. And even Tapas was like smiling. So camaraderie on full display there. And laughter to me is just on a relational level, one of the biggest signs and indicators of how a relationship is going. So it was nice to see the group bond like that for the very first time over a very silly mispronunciation. Okay, let's move on to our MVP of the episode. Dan, what about you?
Okay, this is kind of random, but I thought Topas, just kidding. Topas asking Emika out, just like out of nowhere. I was like, whoa, this guy might have game. And he was just so like dry and like matter of fact about, like robotic about it, that it caught me off guard. So I was like, you have no chance. You're like shooting out of your league, but good on you, Topaz. So MVP for me.
Oh, wow. Nice. Lucy, what about you?
I think for me, it's along similar lines, but my MVP is Kai, which along similar lines, the way he asked Vivi on a date, it felt very natural. He asked, he planned it, he researched the place. And so everything went like pretty smoothly for, I want to say his Myers-Briggs is a P rather than J, right? But for a P to like have executed that pretty well, I was impressed.
Very nice. My MVP of the episode is Hana's panda suit. No, I'm just kidding. I think MVP of the episode for me is Vivi again. I think this is the second episode in a row.
Ooh, we should keep tallies of
We should.
the MVPs.
Oh, that's true. Okay, we'll have a list. As one panelist put it, she was purely on the offensive this entire episode. She went on a date with Kai. She even forgot that she had a date with Kai. And then she went on the offensive with regards to flirting with Rio. She cooked a lot this episode. She cooked breakfast at the start, made connection with Rio off the bat, flirted with him about washing dishes, and they did rock, paper, scissors over who would wash the dishes and had that little cute interaction. And then she talked about how he reminded her of her ex, whether that was right or wrong to do. And like I said, even fit in a date with Kai to go pottery making. I felt like she dominated every scene that she was in, obviously including the last, where even though you did not hear what she was saying with Rio, and even though the cameras were focused on Hannah, it was all because of what was happening on this end with Vivi. And so she affected every scene she was in, even mildly, indirectly in. So the reason why Hannah was depressed and crying and she was bawling and in her feelings was because of Vivi. So Vivi is my MVP of the episode. What about defensive player of the game? Dan, do you have a defensive player of the game?
Not really, but naturally, I would say Vivi. I was going to tag on to your point. I think what's great about, I think why I don't feel animosity towards Vivi is that she does it in a natural way. It seems like she's not trying to hurt the others. It's just who she is, and she is so confident in herself that, when pitted against Hana, you see the insecurity of Hana. Whereas Vivi, I don't think she was like trying to like make Hana feel like crap. Like she wasn't trying to pull a move like Emika would or something like that. It was just like, hey, let's go chat over here. Like, I'm interested in you. And so in that sense, I would say Vivi, but to her credit, she's not trying to be a cockblocker.
Right. What about you, Lucy? Defensive player of the game.
My defensive player is the panda suit. Because it's not doing her any favor. Like, if she wants to appear as someone, a viable candidate to Rio, and he's already thinking that these girls are too young and immature, this panda suit, which she wears throughout the entire episode over multiple days, is really not doing her any favors. I know you found it endearing, Jaehyun, but towards the end, I was like, why is she still wearing this? Like, can she not wear something else?
I mean, I found it endearing, but I agree with you. I'm like, you have to go on the offensive too. It's almost like she was going the opposite way and sort of just giving way to Vivi. That's a great one. I think my defensive player of the game is Rio, just because I felt so bad for Hannah, and I know Rio was in like a downtrodden state with his ankle injury and whatnot, but like him just not being able to, show any emotion in that moment and just awkwardly waffle as she's like expressing her feelings was kind of painful for me. So that for me was like a huge, rejection, even if it was indirect. It's like one of those blocks where the guy just kind of throws their hands up and gets the ball. So my defensive player of the game is Rio. All right, we're going to finish up our awards, but I'm going to break it right here and leave it to our sponsors, and then we'll return after that.
Nice.
Okay, so we're going to finish up our awards here. What about most improved player? Dan, do you have a most improved player here?
I had a little trouble with this one, but Vivi takes both most improved player and defensive player of the game because I appreciated how she is doing what she set out to do on the show, which is meet people and make relationships, make connections. And she is very open to not pursuing one person, but going on multiple dates with everybody. And she's doing it in a non-creepy way. So good on her. I don't know how she can improve from last episode, but I just appreciate her approach to the show.
Also, here's one way she can improve. We learned she's a pretty good artist. She showed us some of her sketches, and I was like, oh, does everybody on this show, is everybody just an artist all of a sudden, except for Kaori? Just kidding. Oh, deep burn. Even Ruka at least is a little bit abstract, okay? So even he has a little bit of genius savant tendency with his artistry. Kaori is just like, here's your Spanish textbook art or whatever.
Oh man, you're
sorry. I did not mean to dig into Kaori about her art. Please, it's great. I don't want to burn any bridges with anybody.
The most successful artist, no, maybe the second most successful artist in the show.
On the show, yeah.
See, there you go. It's working out for her. She knows her lane. She's on brand with her lane. Lucy, who's your most improved player of the episode?
Yeah, I put Tupas, and for the same reason that Dan said for MVP. I think because you didn't get to see much improvement, so I kind of extrapolated what he was probably like normally. And I think it took a lot of courage for him to ask smoothly out someone on a date that's like, that he feels is out of his league. So in one episode, he improved tremendously.
Yep, Tapas is my most improved player as well. I felt like he showed some assertiveness. I thought like episode 1, he would be more of the subservient, non-emotive robot that he was. And he even mentioned when he was with Emeka in that playroom that he was nervous, but they were both able to bond over that. And I think something that I didn't realize about him was just how he's able to actually, given time and space, articulate his emotions, right? And who he is deep down, which you wouldn't think he'd be able to do. It takes time for him. And I think my introverted side can definitely relate with that, you know? So it was nice to see him take matters into his own hands and show us a little more substance beyond his seemingly emotionless exterior. So, and he even secured a date with Emeka, and they both bonded over how calm and shy and nervous they were. And I really liked his quotes on just like him, you know, wanting to feel comfortable with a partner and being okay with silence, which we might get to later. What is everybody's favorite panel take of the episode, if you had one? Dan?
I thought it was very, I thought, man, the panel on the show is great because they always make good points, but they probably see episodes in advance, so they know context. But I thought they made a good point about how Hana had all the right moves, but she didn't execute it smoothly. Like they pointed out, you know, cooking is a very admirable thing to do for somebody. You know, bandaging up somebody's aches and pains is a very affectionate thing. But I think doing that while confessing their, you know, affection for them is just kind of like, whoa, like you're not smooth, and this is not. It renders the situation like she's incapable of advancing that situation, and she instantly becomes friend zoned. And so I thought that was brilliant that the panel pointed that out, and probably prescient to what's to come.
Yeah, I think tactically Hana was all over the place. Like even when she was getting the ice, she left Rio there on the couch with Vivi by themselves. Where it's like she's doing a nice thing, and actually she's doing the more commendable thing by helping, you know, recuperate this guy. But she also left her opponent with the dude right there to establish this bond. So I think tactically and execution-wise, Hannah is just not there, unfortunately. Lucy, what's your favorite panel take?
To go off of what Dan said, it was similar observations by the panel that I liked, but I think they also added that how you respond to someone's affection towards you really depends on that person, right? And an example is like girls may find one guy's actions creepy, but another guy's actions like very romantic. And it could be the same things that they're doing. It's just like, is that guy creepy to you? Or is he like not creepy to you? And I think because of how Rio already felt about Hana, that he didn't like her, like anything she did would have just felt too much to him. Even if she did all the right things, I don't think it would have helped. So I think the panel kind of pointed that out too.
Nice. Yeah, I guess all of our panel takes are pretty serious this time around, because mine is similar, because my panel take that I loved the most was when they analyzed why Vivi brought up her ex. I was like, oh, this is a good thing to dissect, because they discussed the motive behind her bringing that up and whether it was manipulative Baba-chan seemed to think it was an honest observation on her part. But I just thought it was an insightful, thing to even dive into, because Yama-chan joked about how it would be terrible if she brought up her ex because she hated her ex and was bringing it up because Rio seemed to display a lot of the terrible qualities, or whether it was a tactic for her to establish like a more meaningful connection with Rio. And that seems to be the case in this scenario, where she's trying to establish a more immediately intimate connection with Rio by saying, you remind me of this guy that I was once intimate with. And I immediately thought of Usher's You Remind Me of a Girl that I once knew. So yeah, that's my favorite panel take of the episode. Moving on to, I guess we can go favorite quote.
Yes.
Dan, what is your favorite quote of the episode?
Right, let me set it up for you. Vivi and Rio, after dinner, they meander over to the living room, and Hana, it's just such a sad scene where you start to see her shrink, and she, like, to my shock when I watched it, like, she starts crying, and I'm like, my mouth's wide open, because, like, her worst nightmare is happening right in front of her, 10 feet, like, in front of her. And Kai just comes over, and clueless, he goes like, yeah, I want to go, see you do whatever. And then this is my quote of the night. He says, quote, I want to see you serve a drop kick, end quote. And then it cuts to Hana, and then the tear starts rolling. So that's my favorite quote of the night.
I want to see you serve a drop kick.
Just
That's
terrible timing, Kai. Just beautiful. I wanted to watch the next episode immediately.
Also, Dan, to jump off of that, like, here's the image where he's just like, what's going on? This reminds me so much of Edwin for some reason. But that moment in particular where he's just like leaning over and like, oh, wait, what's going on here? Anyways, Lucy, what is your favorite quote of the episode?
I mean, I can't really top that. I just had, my name is not Patos.
I had that too.
That's good.
That one is a good one. Great. My favorite quote is a more serious one, or I guess it just lends itself to showing more of Tapas. I like Tapas and Emika's interaction in that playroom where Emika was like, we're both shy people. How should we navigate this? I thought that was like cute. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
we're both quiet. How do we do this? And Tapas mentions, to be honest, I kind of like these silent moments. I find them comforting. After some rapport has been built, obviously. And then Emika responds with, I get it. You wouldn't have to be on all the time. You can just be yourself. And so say what you want about Emika, whether you believe her or not, whether you still think she's a B word. I do agree that I think she's probably a little bit shy and introverted. So
Right.
I enjoyed that interaction between both of them, also because it kind of just describes married life, right? It's like just simple, mundane in-betweens after the honeymoon stage. And it's good that both of them can relate on that sort of level. So that was my favorite quote of the episode.
Nice.
Let's see, what else do we have? I think that leaves us with Shacked and a Fool, right? And then we're done?
Yep.
Yes. Okay, Dan, do you have a Shacked and a Fool most cringeworthy moment of the episode?
Yes. It's when Kai says, I want to see you serve a drop kick, end quote. No, but to be serious, that whole scene, as we've discussed, just perfect Terrace House. This is Terrace House at its best, like when stuff's happening right in front and you see the reactions and it's just so like apparent on their faces. And so
yeah, that kind of stuff, you can't find actors for. It's like too real. That's when it gets real. Lucy, what about you? Shacked and a Fool most cringeworthy moment.
Mine was Hana's confession to Rio. I don't really even know what she said, because I think she meant to confess something, but then she just said, I have fuzzy feelings about you, around you, and that's it. And I think we had to then plan another confession later.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know. I just don't really know what she was saying. And Rio's body language was really just like not looking at her, shirking
Squirmish.
away. Like, yeah, really bad.
Yeah, and she even said, I'd like you to help me figure them out. And I was like, oh no, don't do that. Yeah, that was one of my options too, where she's just like, you're like a superhero and your weapon is basketball. I feel sad watching my
So,
superhero feel low
man.
and ashamed. And what's funny is I think Rio was feeling the same things we were, the same cringe we were, but in
Yeah.
real time. And he's like,
Yeah.
I don't know how to respond to this.
Right.
And just deflecting and avoiding it altogether. But I guess since you already mentioned that, my cringeworthy moment then would be Vivi sort of, I know we all like Vivi, but just her saying you're almost a splitting image of my ex. I think that's something my friends would tell me not to do as well. Like if I'm just talking and meeting with a new person, you know, as endearing as I am, and even though
That's
you know
true.
me, like it's just something that you shouldn't touch. And you could tell that the room kind of got quiet, and even Rio says that's kind of embarrassing to say, you know,
Yeah.
to bring up. And there was like a moment of silence that came across the room. And even after that, she kept going. She's like, you even blink like him too. And I was like, oh my gosh, this just doesn't get any better. So I think that would be sort of my cringeworthy moment, even though I think it plays in her favor because she was able to establish this intimate connection. All right, I think that does it for all of our awards. Dan, you have to head out.
I do. I'm sorry. I will make
It's
a little
okay.
jingle for the MVP of the night that we can add on the next episode.
Oh, sweet.
Nice.
Perfect. So I have a relationship corner question, but we'll let Dan go and me and Lucy can address that after he leaves. So
All right.
Dan, thank you. We will catch you later.
Bye, Dan.
See you guys.
Jane. Okay, Lucy, I did not prep you to this, but I will prep you to it now. And I guess it's something that happened in this episode. So the relationship corner segment of this episode, again, in the relationship corner, we asked the question, does this episode shed light on a common relational trope or theme that everyone can relate to? I think for me, the theme here is the feeling of encroachment. Whenever we see someone we care for be kind of entrapped in somebody else when someone new comes in. And so I just wanted to bring that topic to the table whenever we feel like our territory is sort of becoming encroached upon by a new person, and maybe even a person that like we don't consider an enemy. And in Hannah's case, it's Vivi, right? So it's someone that she's friends with or has to be friends with, and someone that she has to deal with on a daily basis. So just bringing that to the table of, I guess, channel instances in the past where this has happened for you and I, and how you've dealt with it and how you felt about, you know, just someone you care about all of a sudden having their attention diverted to this new person who you also kind of have to relate with as well. So I guess the question is, I guess, yeah, that's my topic. And just how have you felt in those instances, and how have you dealt with that person or even that person that you like? Do you try and almost just sort of shelter yourself and say, okay, I got to get over this person now in case they start to develop feelings for this new person? Or yeah, I guess, how have you handled it in the past, and how would you handle it now if there is a difference?
I think in the past, and I'm channeling like high school Lucy at this point, because I think that was the only circumstance where we were in a church community and probably a lot of people liked the same people and had crushes on the same people, and it was almost like Terrace House. Like you didn't know who would end up with each other, but you knew like there was something going on. Not to name specifics, but I think I'm usually the type of girl who, you know, in the rom-coms where like there's the pretty like the popular pretty friend, and then there's the side I'm not a Duff, right? But like it's kind of like the Duff-like character. Like I'm like cool with the guy, you know, I can talk sports or whatever, and like I generally know, but when it comes time to then locking it in for a relationship, it's like, oh, do they actually see me that way? So I think for me, I've always known that for myself, that's how I am. So high school Lucy, I think I would just back off. Like I would know that it wouldn't happen. And because in my mind, it's still up to the guy to pursue more or less, I think I kind of just let things fall where they may. I didn't want to like push too hard one way or another. So in a sense, what Hannah did, or crying, like I really felt for her. Like despite, you know, how I feel her EQ is very low and she doesn't know how to process her emotions, I think I really relate to that about her, that I can't do anything but just cry. I can't even like express how I feel. I can only just like internalize everything and just kind of let the other person take over.
And how have you felt with regards to the actual person encroaching upon your territory? In the past, have you felt bitter or just like, I don't know what I can do about this? Maybe I'll concede, but how do you deal with that tension?
With the other person, I think
Yeah.
that generally it's a really close friend. So I probably wouldn't have thought anything less or like tried to, maybe I would initially try to distance myself just from my own emotional sanity. But at the end of the day, it's like, girls, sisters before misters or whatever that saying is, right? Like I would prioritize my friendship first. And if it didn't work out, then that's how it went.
Would you change anything? I know you're married now, but if you weren't in that situation, would you change anything about how you approached it back then, where you would just immediately sort of concede?
That's a good question. I don't know, because I think my personality hasn't changed that much since before. I'm more outspoken now, and I think maybe I would have confronted the girl and just asked like, hey, or tell her, hey, I kind of have feelings for this guy. I noticed like you kind of maybe have feelings for him too. Like, I don't know, I just want to hash it out first instead of going to the guy directly.
Yeah.
But I think as you get older, you kind of know when people are interested in you too. It's not as unclear as like high school boys trying to flirt with everyone or like very mixed signals giving to everyone. I think now it's pretty clear when someone likes you. So
I agree. Yeah, I think for myself, I've been in this situation too multiple times, as well as at church and just seeing people come in and out of people's interests and line of sight. And it's tough. I also felt very much for Hannah just because at that moment too, there's not really anybody to be mad at, So I think that's what makes the situation the most tough, because it's like you want to put your anger out on somebody, but objectively, you can't. You can't really get mad at Vivi. You can't really get mad at Rio. And so you're just kind of in this defeated, resigned state to just
mad
kind
at
of
yourself.
wallow in your feelings of just like, man, I invested a lot emotionally, just internally in this person. And now I have to deal with the fact that maybe nothing will materialize of it. So I very much felt for Hannah. All I can say is just I very much relate with her, and it sucks. I think in the past I have been sort of like butthurt over people who, there is some sort of sense, well, you kind of knew beforehand maybe that I was interested in this person. And I think that's where the lines can sort of get crossed, where you're like, well, I thought it was bros before hoes. But I guess if you have not had that, conversation with that person, that very intentional conversation, then you can't really be mad at anybody. But I mean, I think just naturally there will be that inherent, like, this sucks, and whether it's warranted or not, I think there will be, at least for me in the past, even if I'm friends with that person, just like that bitter taste in your mouth. And it may not be so directed at that person or his personality or character, but it's just like, it pains you to see that person even,
Yeah, I think it's even almost better to have an enemy to direct your anger towards versus in these unrequited situations, if you internalize everything and there's no one to blame, you're just like, I don't know where to go from here. And it wasn't even like I was in a real relationship either, but I have all these feelings. So it's almost easier to pinpoint, like, okay, if the other girl is to blame, like I will blame the other girl, even if it wasn't even her fault,
Right. And so I think if I were in this situation and I see someone encroaching, that situation in and of itself sucks. Just feel the pain, feel the hurt. I would take the necessary steps to, one, actually figure out and dive into whether or not that person has any feelings for me, like the actual person that you're interested in. If he or she doesn't, then it kind of makes it easier on you, because then you can actually phase yourself out. And so in this episode, if I were in Hannah's situation at this age that I'm at right now, I would have picked up the cues and been like, okay, I may have been invested in this person, but clearly that's not being reciprocated. So now I can just abort mission and also kind of maybe just be happy about whatever is going to happen with Vivi in that end and just root her on. So in the past too, I'm very good with this in terms of just being friends with everybody, even in like awkward, tense situations where there's like a convoluted set of relationships going on, I just choose to, once I know that I'm out of the race, just become friends with everybody so that it's easier. I become friends with Vivi, I become friends with Rio, and we're just all friends. And if I have to play the third wheel, then I'm going to be the third wheel.
I would not go that far.
I mean, try and not do that as much, but if you like just emotionally, you have to embrace that sense that you're out of the race. So, but all in all, it just sucks to have someone encroach upon your territory. So we know how Hana feels, but
maybe we should have someone, because our approaches are so similar. We should have someone who would have done something else or the opposite, or like fight for that person and see how that plays out.
Yeah, that would be interesting. But like you said, we're older, like we pick up on cues a lot better. Like how much do you actually ram into that wall with it just being like super futile? But yeah, with that said, that'll do it for our episode and Relationship Corner. That was week 27. What is it?
I can't be
here. Or as our episode states, Panda Depress. All right, thank you guys for listening. Please rate and review us on iTunes. I think we have like 4 or 5 ratings. Please get that number up. And we could use a lot of followers on Twitter, actually. So at Terrace Heart Pod. On Instagram and YouTube, Terrace Up My Heart. We've been pumping out those memes that are killing it on the Terrace House subreddit. So please continue to upvote those. And subscribe, like, follow everywhere you can. And that would help us out a lot. With that said, that'll do it for our episode, and we will return for week 28. Woo. So yeah, all right, we'll catch you guys later.
Bye.
We ain't got no money, but we got lots of time. So let's spend a little, live a little, 'cause every day the sun will rise.
Wake up!
Come smell the roses, oh, come take your time. Dead for a moment, set